Hello, all you wonderful geeks, and welcome to GeekGirlCon live panel. And I'm here for Steamy STEM with these wonderful romance novelists. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, starting with Joe?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jo Segura. I'm an author of adventure rom-coms. My pronouns are she, her. I have dark brown hair, dark brown eyes, I'm wearing a black shirt, and behind me I have a scene of a temple in the jungle.
I am Jasmine Silvera. I am she, her, about 5'6", brown hair, black, and standing in front of a bookshelf with some of my books.
I'm Elle Beauregard. I'm the author of the Bloodline Saga. The first book just came out 2 days ago. My pronouns are she, her. I'm white with blonde hair. I'm wearing purple glasses, a purple sweater, and it's my bedroom behind me.
Hi, I'm Jem Comfort. I am my pronouns are she, her, and I am an author of nerdy rom-coms. And I am white with brown hair, wearing a space-themed dress, and I have my romance-themed bookshelf behind me.
Hello, everybody. I am Jay Fun. I'm your moderator. I am Hispanic. I have dark brown hair with my purple glasses, my dark red lipstick, and I am not wearing black today, but I do have a black collar with maroon and a gray shirt. And hello and welcome. I'm so excited about this panel. As everyone knows, we are all huge book nerds here at GeekGirlCon. Well, I have a list of questions and some Q&A that we would like to ask the audience. So first, let's start with Jasmine. The first question I have is, tell us a little bit about your book and why was it important for you, to you to write a heroine with a career in the STEM field?
Oh, so Binding Shadows is the first book in the Tooth and Spell series. It is a paranormal romance. It's set in the city of Prague and in a magical alternate reality Prague. And my heroine is a librarian. She has a gift that's a magical gift for being able to find things, and she uses that in the library as an archivist and a researcher. So it was really important to me because I think it's very sexy. I think that's a job I've always wanted to have, is to work in a library, And I think we don't often get to see people who do that work be heroes and like lead a story. So it was really exciting to me to kind of breathe life into her and her experience in academia, which had some challenges, and I think which I tried to represent as realistically as I possibly could in a fantasy setting. So yeah, I think that's why it's important to me. No, how about you, Jen?
So my first book, The Astronaut and the Star, which came out in March, is about a gothy, grumpy, bisexual astronaut whose dream is to be the first woman to walk on the moon. But she's recently had a bit of a PR issue. So to prove that she can be a team player and get along with other people, she agrees to train a very happy, cheerful action movie star for a role in a space movie. And of course, since it's a romance novel, romance ensues, and space ensues as well. The reason that I wanted to write a STEM heroine is, well, for one, I really like writing complex, quote unquote, unlikable characters. And the easiest way to make someone unlikable is to just make them really smart and competent at their jobs, or at least for women. And I'm kind of kidding, but not really. And so mostly it's because I think that STEM heroines are like a pretty underrepresented demographic in romance novels, and also in the real world. Like only about a little more than a quarter of people graduating from college identify as women or in a STEM field. And then with the challenges facing us today with like climate change and the global pandemic and all of like, yay, 2022, I feel like we're missing out on a lot of smart, qualified people. So the more that we can make STEM careers sexy and fun and people can see themselves in like the image of a STEM career, the more likely that we'll get more qualified people in those roles who can help us out. Joe, what about you?
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, I write fun, sexy rom-coms, and my debut book is Raiders of the Lost Heart, and it's going to be released in fall of 2023. If you couldn't guess by the title, Raiders of the Lost Heart, the book is inspired by Indiana Jones and other adventure movies such as like The Mummy and Romancing the Stone, The Goonies, all those fun novels where we see them out there searching for treasure or lost cities or whatever it may be. So this story is about a badass female archaeologist, Dr. Socorro Mejia, and she's dedicated her whole life to searching for the remains of her ancient Aztec ancestor. And when she finally has the opportunity to go on such a dig, she finds out that her disgustingly handsome nemesis from grad school, Dr. Ford Matthews, is actually the one that's going to be leading the dig. So lots of adventure ensues, lots of sexiness and secret pining ensues, but it's really just supposed to be a fun novel. So archaeology is not really what most people consider as being STEM. It's more of a social science, but it does rely heavily on STEM for conducting the research. So things like studying the soils and studying rocks, DNA analysis, gridding the sites, those are all STEM related techniques that archaeologists still use in doing their work. So because it was a book that's focused on archaeologists out in the jungle, it was important to me to make sure that they also include those types of techniques in the book. So you have them talking about gridding off the sites, you have them looking at soils and things like that, because I just really wanted to get into more of the science part of searching for the lost remains of the main character's ancestor. All right, Elle, you're next.
Fun times. So I write het and sapphic urban fantasy and romance, and my tagline is where magic is real and women win. And so part of that to me is representing women who have all kinds of backgrounds and careers. I myself came from a career in the digital gaming industry. And so while I've worked alongside STEM and in STEM for a long time, and while I don't end up representing digital gaming in my books for a myriad of reasons, it was important to me to show that. So in the Cloaked series, which is a complete series, takes place mostly in New Orleans, the main character in the first book, The Cloaked Shadow, she's the ecological and economic impact impact coordinator for an architecture firm. And background fact, that's actually the job that I had wanted when I was in undergrad. So I would have had to have gone and gotten many graduate degrees to do that. I didn't do that. So it was really interesting to get to write her doing this job that was like so near and dear to my heart in urban planning. I have another character in Blood Bond that just came out this week. And while she doesn't have a career in STEM, because she's been raised in a cult and doesn't have a career at all, fantasy reasons, she's a computer programmer. She builds hardware. She's a hacker, a white hat hacker, programs computers for their family, with quotes around it. So I love also having to learn things that I didn't know in order to write a character. And so I like having a lot of fun. I was like, well, what can I make Matra do that I don't know very much about, but I have access to learning? And computers, like computer programming, was one of it. I won't say I know a lot about it, but I know enough to know I don't know a lot.
And that's a lot. I mean, I think that takes a lot of guts. Isn't it? It's like one of the best things to say is like, I don't know a lot about that, and I'm going to learn, and then I'm going to put it into art. And that's amazing.
I'm going to learn just enough
to
be passable.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I knew everything about being an astronaut. It's like what I do in my spare time.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you look like an astronaut, and the goth part and the cute dress, and you obviously could be the cutest librarian. And I totally can see you with an Indiana Jones hat, like stealing a skull.
I mean,
look at the ruins.
I'm in the jungle right now.
Right?
She's really there.
I know.
My hands disappear every now and then, but that's just because I'm also magic.
Yes.
It's
I do read a lot of books. Does that count?
authors are magical. It takes you, like, I don't know. I love you guys. And chat loves you and your books too. Like, there are so many great positive comments, and apparently a lot of people are going broke soon. So, but not you guys. That's amazing. I really love the ideas behind all these books. They're so original. That's just awesome. So obviously you guys wrote these characters. What kinds of challenges do their STEM careers present in their stories? I mean, I love the twists and the turns. They're not, just so straightforward. It's not something, that you would read every day. A goth astronaut, librarian. I mean, like, those are all ones that, are pretty original, like architect, like, I'm sorry. Like, I love learning about digging sites. I love learning about, I totally think archaeology could be, and I didn't know it wasn't STEM. Just sorry. I feel bad. Like, I felt like it was science. But Joe, do you want to go ahead and lead with this question and tell us what kind of challenges do their STEM careers present in the story?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, my story really centers on this badass female archaeologist, and she's kind of like this Lara Croft type character where she's always having these crazy adventures and getting into shenanigans where people start to not take her seriously. She's also this beautiful Latina who's very curvaceous. And so what people see is they see the Lara Croft, the like, just as in the Tomb Raider series where she's actually had fake boobs, and people are just looking at her as this like sex symbol and not really looking at her for her brains. And so that's actually a major plot line throughout the book, is Dr. Mejia really struggling with wanting to be taken seriously and not having people just judge her based on the way she looks, and recognizing that she's actually a really competent and qualified archaeologist. The fact that a white man was chosen to lead this archaeological dig for her ancestors' remains is really hard for her. And the book really it starts out with her finding out that he's the one who was selected, although she's clearly the one who is more qualified to undertake that dig. And so, even though archaeology really is starting to lead more female dominated, it's more than 50% females that are in the field, it's still this patriarchal career. And people think of archaeologists, they think of Indiana Jones. Look at all of the movies that are out there that are about archaeologists or people who are searching for, lost cities and treasure and whatnot. The lead is almost always a man, and there's always this, beautiful female who's over there to make the man look good. Well, I wanted to switch that. So in Raiders of the Lost Heart, Corey, she's the badass. She's the one who's doing all these amazing things, just like Lara Croft. And, in the end, it's really about her also, coming into her own and recognizing, the great things about herself, so that she can overcome this idea that all she is just this, this sexy, shenanigan-ridden archaeologist. So anyway, so all right.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. I mean, yeah, people judge too much by looks and not enough by the inside.
Yep, exactly.
Elle, would you like to tell us a little bit about the architect?
Sure. Yeah, let's see. So most of the challenges that Xander faces in the Cloak Shadow, and continuing actually into the second book, Medium's Possession, have to do with common issues in corporate culture. Coworkers who don't know the difference between being a good coworker and asking you out on a date, who being required to go to happy hours that you don't want to go to and hang out with coworkers that you don't feel comfortable around. It's funny, on TikTok, I do these little it's like you're watching a text message exchange happen, and they're not in the book, but there was one that I wrote where Xander is texting her boyfriend being like he came to a happy hour with her, and she's texting him whilst they're both there, and she's like, if this guy does not stop talking to me, right? Like, and he's like, well, how do I come in for the rescue? And that it's just, it's experiences. If you're a woman in the corporate world, unfortunately, chances are you've had that experience of like, I really want to be nice to you and I need to de-escalate this situation, but you are, you're talking to a male coworker who just doesn't quite pick up on what you're putting down. So a lot of that, and then a lot of things that we all deal with in corporate culture, whether you're a man, a woman, or just all people, right? Of being expected to give more than you have or you should have to give for a role. So that ends up being a lot of why she and in the final book, they end up moving to Seattle and she gets a whole new job to hopefully make that better. But yeah.
We have a name for those type of characters that hit on, or people in real life who hit on people at corporate functions, right? Don't we guys call them Jeffs? We call them Jeffs. Nothing against actual Jeffs, but you know.
That's so funny. My brother-in-law's name is Jeff.
No.
Again, there's a lot of really great Jeffs out there.
I've known many nice Jeffs.
I know other Jeffs, and the name suits them so well, and I'm just like
hashtag not all Jeffs.
Hashtag pretty spot on for not the other Jeffs, but yeah, not my brother-in-law. He's pretty amazing, but yeah. Jen, would you like to go next?
Yes. So Reggie, obviously, she's an astronaut competing for a spot in the Artemis missions to become one of the first women to walk on the moon. And those missions are really going on right now. And as you might expect, she started off by getting her geology degree, but then she came up through the US Navy as a test pilot. So I think like a lot of women in very male-dominated fields, especially such an elite competitive field, she's kind of had to constantly prove that she is tough enough to hang, right? So just meeting expectations isn't enough. I mean, like, you're supposed to be the best of the best. So she not only has to be the best woman, but she has to be like the best person. So she has to completely blow away expectations. And in order for her to do that, at least the best way that she knows how, she's had to A, make her career her entire life, and B, cut out anything that can be perceived as weakness. And a lot of times, especially in like both the corporate culture and in like the military culture, which kind of converge in NASA, those are often very feminine traits. So she doesn't apologize. She doesn't know how to ask for help. So she's basically becomes like this lone wolf. And that's kind of worked for her up until now, just because she's been so freaking good at her job. But obviously going to the moon and living on a moon base with other astronauts requires a high degree of teamwork and sociability, because you don't want to be stranded literally off planet with someone who sucks. So, she has to basically relearn these feminine traits that she's, quote, feminine traits that she's suppressed so far and never been able to nurture, because men who can demonstrate, cis men who can demonstrate teamwork and like sociability are just like really likable guys. But a girl who does it too much, or a cis woman who does it too much, will be seen as like flighty or like too fun and too like, not serious enough. And that's something that Reggie struggles with throughout the entire book, is kind of figuring out how to balance the fact that she can still be a kind, caring, teamwork oriented person with the fact that she is also extremely, good and ambitious.
Yeah, I feel that. I get the flighty one a lot. I get that. Jasmine, let's hear about this librarian.
Yeah, so Barbara is, for me, it was really interesting to write because she's a woman and she's also a woman of color. And although often my favorite librarians growing up were female librarians in academia, where she's at trying to get her PhD, she's finding herself struggling both her gender and her race in a system that is predominantly male and predominantly white. And she has an issue with an older professor who takes advantage of his position over her. And when she rejects him, that basically blackballs her. And it was interesting to me because I wrote, I got out of academia with my bachelor's degree and then ran screaming. And I did speak with some of my friends and network who had pursued higher degrees. And so I got these stories and I thought, oh man, I'm going to go way over the top and this is going to be too much and too far. And the response that I've gotten to Barbara's story and her experience in the book has just been really incredible. Like, people have let me know how represented they felt and how common some of these struggles are, especially at higher levels of academia. So, you know, as part of the story, she's basically been blackballed and she's not able to move forward in her career because she's pissed off the wrong person. And I think that's something that a lot of women have experienced professionally, academically, and that, you know, so she's got to overcome that. And then also, you know, she winds up meeting the hero of the story, Tobias, who is also an academic, but happens to be a werewolf, who is a very reluctant werewolf. He doesn't want to. He's facing his own challenges with being in an academic setting and being a supernatural creature. And the two of them really find out kind of together. She gets to experience what it's like to have someone take her seriously in her role, and respect her in her role. And which is how it should be. So I think like bringing that as a challenge really maybe grounds the supernatural bits a little bit and some of the real challenges that women in higher education face, which unfortunately still are happening right now. So it was a little shocking and a little disappointing to hear that from people that, you know, some of these issues haven't gone away, but I just hope in representing a story where that is overcome and it ends well, that I'm doing a little bit to make that better, at least surface it a little. So.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. As a woman who, my master's is in education, and I come from a family, not a family, but like from a place where academia was, you know, trying to reach the top, and you know, that's pretty.
Well, it's hard because, you know, we're told that this will open the doors to us, especially as women of color. You know, we have to be better than the best, and we are trying to look for all the ways that we can get to the top and be respected, and, you know, get the respect that we deserve.
Right.
Just for being in the
just
space.
Opening doors for us, right? We're opening doors for more than one. And when you open doors for more than one, you're setting an example. And then when you're blackballed, you feel like you just kind of shut doors, but it's not just shutting doors for you, it's shutting doors for others too. Yeah. Oh, we have a question, which is great because we have a Q&A now, guys. You guys ready? All right, chat, you ready for the questions? Okay, this one comes from Princess of Peonies. Questions for Joe. Question for Joe. Sorry, not questions, just a question. Is there any cultural differences in archaeological practices, understandings, expectations that are explored in the book? Thinking of Dr. Jessica Hernandez's book about the indigenous sciences and how it differs from what we think is the right way to science.
So I have not read that book. So I can't really speak about, you know, what that book particularly talks about. But, you know, one of the things in my novel is I try to be really culturally sensitive to the Aztec culture. It is a culture that is very different than even Mexican culture today. And the characters in the book, you know, they try to acknowledge what that culture was like and not condemn those practices, because there are things that the Aztecs would do that in today's life might seem to be problematic. So things like sacrificing people, or castration is even talked about in the book. So as far as the practices that they employ, you know, really this book is supposed to be just a fun book. So I don't get too much into the science and what necessarily they're doing to search for the various artifacts. In particular, you know, I really, you know, I think that the reader sometimes just needs to just suspend belief just for the sake of storytelling. So I kind of go into the book just hoping that the reader can just accept that the main character, Dr. Mejia, is really just that good. And so, you know, while all these other people might have been searching for these remains for years and years and years, you know, she goes out there and all of a sudden she's able to do what other people haven't been able to do for hundreds of years. So I don't really get into the differences in, what techniques might be used to, search for certain things over other things, or what different people might even use. Really, this book is focused mostly on the romance, but with still a lot of sprinkling in about what their surroundings are like, what they're doing on this dig, and then, what that background is that Dr. Mejia experiences as a woman of color, and being in a field, again, that's not necessarily male dominated, but patriarchal.
It's a great answer. It's good. It really was. Ace of Pentacles says, you're definitely making things better with your book, Jasmine. I want to say, I know this isn't right, but the Tick Collector. Question for Elle. Any specific cult you researched for blood bonds?
Oh, wow. So many. So I went on this just like deep dive of watching so many documentaries, y'all, and I find that stuff like fascinating. So Scientology, the FLDS, United Nations of Islam, NXIVM, whew, doggy. I'm like blanking on a whole bunch on some of the other ones, but yeah, it's been a thing. And I'm very fortunate. My youngest sister has a degree in psychology with like a focus on forensic psychology and like with an interest in cults. And so I kind of mined her for what some of the psychology behind that. And I just planned out for the rest of the series how the cult aspect will play into it and how that's going to grow and what's going on behind the scenes that we as readers don't get to see, but so that as it grows, like, so I know what's happening behind the scenes. And so we can have this big, like, boom of what's really been going on this whole time. So, because the main character escapes her cult in the first book, which is good, but then, it doesn't just cease to be after that. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
That's escaping cultism is always good. Oh man, Scientology has always been interesting to me, especially when I find out so many like musicians that I love, like Beck. He was or still could be. I haven't recently checked up on it. Was currently a Scientologist, and it always makes me like question everything. So question for all, and this is from Ace of Pentacles 1. What geeky STEM characters have inspired you from other books / pop culture?
I know me and Jazz are definitely inspired by Naomi Nagata from The Expanse. Number 1. We just have to plug our favorite sci-fi book and TV show.
For the win. Yes,
yeah,
definitely. I mean, that's fun. And I love that I can as a kid, I can cosplay Naomi Nagata. Like, it's great having a character like that. And it reminds me of why the representation is so important. It's like I was 40 years old before I could walk into a con in a costume or a character where I was like, I really identified with 100%, who was geeky and smart and beautiful and also brown woman and in space, which is where I really wanted to be. So yeah, hell yeah, Naomi Nagata.
Yeah.
I'm gonna totally date myself with mine, and then I know when this ends, I'm going to think of one that's more current. But mine is oh my god, what's her name? Angelina Jolie's character in Hackers.
You can't date yourself.
Crash and Burn. Crash and Burn.
What's her Burn?
His name's Crash Override, right? And hers is Acid Burn.
She was. Hold on, he said it because he was like, "Wait, you are." Acid Burn.
Google it right now.
Acid Burn. Okay.
Yeah.
So her, I should have known a lot of things about myself upon watching Hackers.
I mean, Hackers was great. Let's be honest. And Angelina Jolie played that role pretty great.
So good. So good. So that and Ethan Hawke's character in Gattaca. And Uma Thurman's character, just Gattaca in general. Hackers and Gattaca were formative movies for me.
I still own that.
I know. Now I want to go watch them both. Yeah. Joe.
Joe.
I mean, I think I've already said where my geeky fandom inspiration has come from. Clearly, Indiana Jones, the main character in the male lead in Raiders of the Lost Heart is named Dr. Ford Matthews, and I think you can probably figure out why, but if not, he's named after Harrison Ford. And I mean, I'm sorry, Angelina Jolie is just awesome, and her character in Lara Croft is just like, she's just so freaking cool, and so she really inspired my my character, Dr. Mejia, who is basically a Latina version of Lara Croft. So.
Love that.
That's
Who's
fair.
next?
That's fair. I was like, Angelina Jolie is pretty awesome.
Yeah, we all just drift off thinking about Angelina
I
Jolie.
know.
Angelina Jolie, like,
Part eyes, just parts.
well, it was her,
Okay.
Selma Hayek, right? Because like Selma Hayek to me was like a pretty amazing Hispanic, like Angelina Jolie. Like
So I will tell you, J Fun, they asked me, okay, what do you want for your book cover? And I was like, okay, so think Lara Croft, but Salma Hayek. Like, because that is, to me,
it's like
is
Salma
Dr.
Hayek and Zorro and like with Antonio Banderas, but like Salma Hayek, but like from dusk till dawn doing that dance. Like
Beautiful. Just beautiful.
yeah. Okay. Now that we're all thinking about Salma Hayek.
And Angelina Jolie.
And Angelina, the dream girl brunch. Did any of these challenges come from, oh, sorry, now we're going to go back to questions. Did any of these challenges from your characters come from your real life experiences? Jen, do you want to come first? Do you want to answer first, or?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not actually an astronaut in real life. I'm really sorry to disappoint everyone. Actually,
Your dress says something different.
I know I lied with my outfit. I actually ended up going into restaurant management, but it was a long path to get there. I actually did start off as an astrophysics major, but it was definitely, I felt like I was definitely outnumbered by men in most of my classes. And when I was, in that field, I got a lot of like, you don't look like a physics major. And I think part of like my like insecurity about going into that field was back in high school, I had a physics teacher who basically wouldn't recommend me for wouldn't write me a letter of recommendation for college, even though I was in his AP physics class and I was getting A's, because he just said for some reason that I didn't take it seriously enough. And it was like, it's weird because I was one of 3 women in that class, and it made me feel like, okay, well, what am I just not a serious person? Because I'm getting good grades, but there's something about my personality that doesn't scream astrophysicist, right? And I think that's, looking back on that, I'm like, that's pretty messed up, right? Like that people feel like that kids, and girls these days are being told that they don't fit like a specific mold, right? And I do think things have improved a lot since I was in high school, which was yesterday. But I mean, since then, I think things have gotten a little bit better, but I think there's still a way to go in kind of normalizing that you can look like anything and you can act like anything and you can still be passionate about the sciences. And then after I switched from astrophysics, I got diagnosed with ADHD after I graduated college. But before then, a lot of my insecurity about going into science was that I just didn't feel like I was smart enough. And later I learned, okay, I have ADHD. Maybe that's why I'm not good at like test taking, for example. But then I went into the restaurant field and majored in restaurant management and hospitality. And that's another really male dominated field where you basically have to put up with brutal hours and be you know, tougher than everyone else, and kind of put up with like a baseline level of sexual harassment just to kind of like cut it in the field. And I think it sucks that that's kind of the, you know, the standard now is like, if you want to prove yourself in a male dominated field, you have to be more than them, right? You have to kind of put aside everything that makes you you and act like a stereotypical, culturally accepted cis male. And I think that the more that we can do to show in our writing and in culture and media that that's not always how it has to be, the more that we can create a world where more people will feel comfortable going into STEM fields.
Put happy faces in those emails with hearts, everyone.
Yeah, all the exclamation marks you want.
All the
You should be
exclamation
excited about
point
science. It's
forever.
cool.
Yes. And those professional emails. Just saying.
Exactly.
Just letting chat know we have another Q&A after the question after this. So those questions you guys are asking right now will get answered, I promise. Sorry guys, we have more questions. Everybody just loves asking you guys questions. Elle, same question to you. Did any of these challenges come from real life experiences?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm sitting here thinking about everything that Jen just said and like, ugh. I kind of got in trouble at work. So slight background story. I left the corporate world at the end of 2019, a sweet summer child who didn't know what was coming for me in 2020 and the rest of us. So the timing couldn't have been better, but I kind of got in trouble, right, at work for suggesting that instead of telling me that I should act more like a man, that maybe they should all try to act more like women. And they didn't like that. Aww. So, because I know, so I get it really started frustrating me, like, because I was in a position of leadership and my boss continually was criticizing the way that I managed my team, but I had no turnover on my team. I had a super happy group of employees who worked for me. I emphasized psychological safety in how I managed. And because that led to employees who were like willing to ask hard questions, my boss did not enjoy that. And it became really clear to me that the only way to succeed was exactly what Jen and Joe and everybody says, is like, I have to be more better than everyone else. And the only way to be seen as that is to downplay everything that is about people, that is nurturing, that is about creating psychological safety, that's seen as feminine. And I finally just had to tell HR, like, look, I'm not going to change me beyond learning like more leadership skills. Like, I'm happy to learn and adjust, but I'm not going to like be more mean so I can stick around. And that, yes. So yes, those things of, you know, being in a meeting where you're maybe one of two women, if you're lucky, and no one lets you finish a sentence like Xander does in The Cloak Shadow, been there. And it was nice to exercise those demons onto the page.
I wish I could say I have not been there, but I've definitely been there. And I was one woman. And the woman talking to me was that woman that was supposed to be meaner. And she told me she did not like me crying and that I cannot show any emotion. And then she tried to hold a because I have anxiety against me. And I was an educator. So, you know, I think society, I am right 100% with all of you. Like I think that emotions and the idea of being the idea of femme has just been taken to just different levels. And it's like, you know, it's okay to be soft. It's not okay to be hard all the time.
Yeah.
It's okay to have those warm little fuzzy things inside, like teddy bears jumping around and eating candy. All that's good. Like, lighten up.
I think it's actually necessary to have a balance, right? I mean,
Yeah.
emotion, like people put emotions and logic on like polar ends of the spectrum, like logic is good and emotions are bad.
Yeah,
But
but you
honestly, I think there was a
both.
very, very good Star Trek captain who said that, logic can be used to justify anything that's its
Yes.
strength and also its flaw. And I think that really speaks to the fact that you cannot make good decisions without also having empathy. And vice versa, you also need to have logic to your emotional decisions. But I think somewhere in the middle is that sweet spot.
Was that Jean-Luc Picard, by the way?
I believe it was, that's from Voyager. So that's Janeway.
Okay. Jane. Obviously, Jane. I do love me some Star Trek, so I had to ask.
I know, it's like all of the captains have such good wisdom.
They do. Oh gosh. Sorry. Jasmine, you want to go next?
I feel like I maybe hit on this one a lot in the last one. But I do feel like, it's maybe less my own personal experience and more my, watching women that I care about go through, who are passionate about getting higher education and getting degrees in the fields that mean everything to them, and dedicating, God, I can't even imagine spending, I don't have the commitment for a whole episode of a TV show sometimes. So imagine the idea of spending 8 years in higher education and struggling, and then having the block be someone whose ego is bruised because they got turned down, or, rising up in their field only to have an insecure supervisor or advisor, be cruel to them, is really hard to watch as a friend, as someone who loves them. And, so I think this is for all of those women, these are for all of my girls who are out there really striving to do the things that they're passionate about and they love. And, and I want to see them win. And so here I am going to write the win that I can give them, which unfortunately doesn't overturn the world. But if it changes a few minds and gives some people some hope, I'm down for it.
You know what? And it takes them to a different world while they're drinking their wine in a hot tub, and you do it, girl.
100%. I think it's a high compliment to be considered escapist fiction, because we have a lot to escape from right now. This world needs all of us, and it needs us fighting and working hard, but we also have to take care of ourselves. We need to self-care, we need to rest, we need to save it up and be ready for all the fights that are coming down the pipeline. And so, yeah, if you want to escape with me for a few hours in a very sexy, magical, alternate Prague, please do. It would be my pleasure to take you there.
I do, Jazz. I do.
Joe.
I honestly don't have anything else to add. I mean, I will say, sure, the challenges that Dr. Mejia faces are the same ones that I face as a amazing, badass Latina archaeologist who's swinging on vines in the jungle right now. See these are the fun. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm not actually an archaeologist. I have been on an archaeological dig. It was probably the coolest experience of my life. But like the character in my book, I am in a field that is it's not male dominated, as in there are more men in that field, but it is very patriarchal. And so a lot of the struggles that my main character has are similar to things that everyone else here has already explained. And so, I think as women in the working world, we just unfortunately all have these same experiences, no matter what jobs we do. But it's nice to be able to write these characters who are able to really break down those walls and do something different and really stand up for themselves. So
yeah, I just love the girl power here. It's like good. It's good. I try, like, now I've been reading. I mean, I love books. Have always been my escape since a little bitty girl. You read all those books, you escape, you read your books. That's how you do it. And you guys were talking about how you always had that one. When I was a little girl, one of my male teachers was an English teacher, and he told me I couldn't write. And so I've never written a book, but I've always thought it would be great to write a book. So I never wrote a book because he said I couldn't write. But I always got 3s and 4s out of all these like super like toss tests and star tests when I grew up in Texas. So it was one of those things, but I always loved writing, like reading fantasies, but I never wrote because I was always scared to write. But one of my all-time favorite recent books series is the Graceling series, Sparrowwood series. If you guys haven't read it, super cute, very kind of romantic, sexy, steamy. But I think you guys will like it. It's about a girl that kicks ass. And the first series is called Graceling, and it's badass. But yeah, it reminds me a lot of Jo, your little heroine. She's pretty cool. And she kicks a lot of ass.
Yes.
So
That's what we like.
yeah.
Who's that series by?
Oh,
Is that Kristen Kishore?
I was just gonna
yes,
say.
it
I think
is.
so.
Oh,
It
because
is.
I love those books.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is her. Oh, you read them? Okay, yes.
Yeah.
They're such good books.
They're so good.
Good books, yes. I just got my sister-in-law to read them, and she like loves them, and I'm like, yes. So I'm trying to get more people to read, because not a lot of people know about them, but I'm like, read them, they're so good.
Yeah.
They're really cute. Do you guys want to do another one of y'all's questions, or do y'all want to go to Q&A, because there's a few questions kind of piling up in Q&A.
Let's do Q&A. I'm
Yeah,
good with that.
sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
I love Q&A.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I just want to give you guys the option. So Adasho asked, if you could fan cast movie versions of your books, who would you cast besides Angelina? I think they're on to us.
Dang it.
No, Barbara's definitely not an Angelina. I think that's it's funny, my own taste versus I think that that's a really hard one. I prefer to let you all fan cast. Like, I think that you will read it and take her into your mind, hopefully your heart, and you will put the face on her that fits. I think at one point Gugu Mbatha Raw was part of my inspiration board. She was in Belle, which is one of my all-time favorite historical romance movies anyway. And Beyond the Lights, another great romance if you haven't seen that one, directed by Gina Blythe Princewood. I think I'll settle with that one.
Nice. Jo.
Well, I mean, even
Yeah,
in her
Angelina.
50s, Selma Hayek, she's got it going on. So
She's
she can
immortal.
be
She has no
my
age.
Corey. And I would probably say Chris Hemsworth, when he is in the female Ghostbusters movie, would be like the perfect Ford Matthews. Not the Thor Chris Hemsworth. I'm specifically talking about that.
He's
Chris
not too buff, but like a little dorky.
with the glasses.
Yeah.
and very- yes, perfect. That's it.
Oh, Jen.
Well, for Reggie, I've got to go with your quintessential goth girl on TV. So Aubrey Plaza. A lot of people have compared her, Reggie, to kind of the relationship in Parks and Rec, which actually I haven't seen, but now that I've seen clips of them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's 100%. And then of course, Kristen Ritter, who was amazing in Don't Trust the Bee and Apartment 23, very underrated show. But both of those are great options. And then for John, my kind of ADHD himbo action movie star, I would have to go, it's hard to say. I think probably, like Channing Tatum's character in what's it called? The Lost City of D. Yeah. That's basically John right there. He's just like really good-hearted, but just like not super street savvy. Yeah, he loaded all of his points into charisma and really shorted intelligence.
Street smart's gone.
Yeah. Yeah,
that.
street smarts. He is intelligent. He doesn't have the street smarts. The street smarts.
Elle, what about you?
Oh my God, don't put me on the spot. I'm like, all these wonderful ladies will tell you, I'm so bad at knowing actors and actresses' names. So, okay. I think her name's Ashley Greene, who played Alice in the Twilight series.
Yes.
So her with an actual pixie cut would be Xander for sure, like lithe and angular. but like Xander's described at one point as like all out B in a band T and a pixie cut. So that's her. Callum, I don't know, it's really weird. I can see them in my head, and so then I have a really hard time putting people on top of them. But
just describe them.
Okay, so Callum's like edgy, dark blonde hair that's like longish and undercut and all tattooed. I think if I think about the dude who's in, is it called Outlander, where they travel through time?
Mhm.
Yes.
And they
The Jamie
So
guy, the
that
hot
really
redhead.
hot
Joe,
guy.
you'll know about that.
What's that?
Is that Sam Hunan?
I don't know.
The
The
redhead,
hot
right?
redhead. Joe
Ever
loves
the
hot
dude.
redheads. She's
The-
gotta
the
know him.
Jamie.
So like, yeah, Jamie, yeah, that guy, but like today times and not all dirty, but like dirty. You get
What's
me?
wrong with
Take off the leg
dirty?
turn of the
What, have you not seen The Witcher? Come on.
No, so The Witcher has
I don't
violence.
want to talk about The
So I
Witcher right
can't-
now, okay? After
No.
that,
We
we
can't
can't
talk
news.
about it.
we're not
Got
talking about
news?
show should
The
not be
We're all
news?
very upset. Very.
I'm actually not that upset. I wasn't that anyways.
Yennefer would never.
Yes, right.
We don't have to go
Yes.
there.
I needed a
but-
break from him as an actor. He's in everything. He's taking over the Highlander, guys. I was kind of bummed.
Okay.
Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I got. If that was me.
Okay. That was all you got.
We'll think for you. We'll let you know, Elle. So next time you get that question, you have an answer.
Yeah, please do. Like, I should
Just
research.
present pictures of like
So like, I have a Pinterest board. You can go on Pinterest, and I have like people that are just random like models on there, so you can see what they look like. I have no idea who they are, and unless it's Kristen Stewart, I probably don't know who it is.
I know musicians better than actors, but I don't know actors' names unless they're on Star Trek or Doctor Who. But if you're a musician, I probably know your name if you're a 90s grunge musician or hip
I
hop.
love that for you. I love
But
that.
that's it.
Yeah. I'm like, I probably know the actor's name if they were in the Twilight series, because I have a problem. Or if they were in like a cult 1990s movie.
If they were in X-Files, yeah.
Oh, I like that. I don't have
I
that.
feel like we should all do quiz night. Like I feel like
Yes.
between the 5 of us, we probably would have a full memory bank.
Ancient
Of, anybody
aliens?
have sports people? Anybody know any sports?
I could bring my husband. He's
people?
got sports.
Like we just need
And mine.
like, I think we've got film, we've got bands, we've got 90s movies.
Mhm.
Like what else
Got,
do we need?
yeah,
Find some
Trivia
sports
night.
people.
Trivia, let's do it.
I love it.
Next question. Question for everyone. Do you feel any pressure to write for current trends? If so, could you expand upon what that looks like?
Mm.
Jen, you go.
Me, I don't write trends. I set trends. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
No.
baby. Yeah, you do.
Go, you trans.
I feel like the way the publishing, like, because I'm traditional published, I think this is probably easier for Elle and Jazz to answer because they're indie pubbed, but like traditional publishing, there's a 2-year, basically like a 2-year delay. So if you try to write to trends, you're going to be so uncool by the time your book comes out. So you basically have to try to guess what's going to be cool. And when I wrote The Astronaut and the Star, I was like, all right, what's happening in 2 years from now? And I follow space stuff. So I was like, well, the Artemis missions are supposed to happen in 2023. This was like before the pandemic. I didn't know this was going to happen. And obviously the Artemis missions have been pushed way back. But at the time I was like, we're going to have a woman walking on the moon by like 2025. So this is going to be so relevant. So you kind of just have to guess what's going to be cool and write something that you really enjoy writing, because you're going to have to read your book like 100 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say from the indie space, there is a lot of pressure to try to write to trend. But I like try not to do, like, not just try not to do that. I find that I can't do that. So because like Jen said, you have to love what you're writing, and you're going to have to read it 100 times. And when I try to write something that's not just kind of flows naturally, I hate it. And my mental health suffers. So
That's fair.
I think unless the trend is personally interesting to me, or I think I have something interesting to say in that space, I don't think it's going to serve anybody for me to write to a trend. Like I love reading things that get trendy, but I often, I don't have anything to add. Like if there's not an angle that I can approach that feels really interesting to me, I'm a slow writer. I don't write fast. And so I think people who are good at writing fast books really fast maybe can write to trend a little better. But like others have said, like I'm a slow writer and I tend to read things a whole bunch before they go out to the world. So I have to really like it and want to be able to pick it up over and over again. And I haven't hit a trend recently with that. So I will be forever just like off the edge of the trend. I'm okay with that.
Yep.
Joe?
So like what Jen said, my book is traditionally published, and so it takes a really long time. I will say, while I was out looking for an agent for a completely different manuscript, I was like, well, I'm going to write something else. And rom-coms are actually really popular right now. I think part of it is because people are looking for an escape from all the shit that's been going on around us for the last couple of years. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll write a rom-com. And someone had actually tweeted a question like, what are some careers for characters and romance that we don't see enough of? And I jokingly tweeted archaeologists, because there's a lot of bones to search for, wink, wink. And I was like, oh, you know what? That might actually be kind of fun. And so, in a way, I suppose I kind of wrote to trend because I was trying to write a rom-com, but adventure romance is not a huge thing, especially within the last few years. There haven't been very many adventure romances. There are some that have been coming out, so it's kind of cool to see. But other than that, it's really just wanting to write something that was fun, to be more of an escape for everything that's been happening around us. Ooh.
Escapism is real. It's real.
Mm-hmm.
You guys up for another question? There are a couple I have to catch up on in chat. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right. So another from Princess of Peonies. Another cue for everyone. Haha. Do you experience any sexist you're not a real author nonsense given your focus on romance? Who wants to go first? Any firecrackers out there?
Yes, I want to talk about how I wanted to put an epigraph in The Astronaut and the Star. That was like a really meaningful quote to me. And so I reached out to this really well-known, really beloved, scientist who has written many books, and some of those books have been turned into movies. I'm not going to name names. He's no longer with us, but I reached out to his estate and I was like, I have this book, and I described the book, and they were like, that sounds amazing. We went back and forth and they were like all about it. And then they asked me to send a synopsis in which I revealed that it was a romance novel. And then all of a sudden they were like, ooh, yeah, actually, this isn't a good fit for us. I was like, are you kidding me right now? I will hold this grudge forever. And to this day, it still kind of upsets me that I'm like, literally, this guy wrote a science fiction book that was all about love. It was basically the book version of Interstellar, the prequel to Interstellar, where it was basically how does love fit in with the concept of science and exploring the universe. And I thought this was perfect for a book called The Astronaut and the Star. And they thought they were too good for a romance novel. So that's my story that I felt like I needed to share with everyone.
No, glad you did. No, thank you.
Because I think that's really common in the science fiction community, even with my book, because the name astronaut is in the title, people downloaded it thinking that it was going to be science fiction. And then they were like, ew, there's sex in this book. Disgusting. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry for teaching you about sex.
Sex is science. Sex is in the stars.
Yeah.
Sex is probably how the stars burst. Who knows? It's just sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I get a lot of backhanded compliments. I get a lot of that's really well written for a romance novel. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's like telling me you're not like other girls. We've all heard that bullshit line, right? I am not trying to be, what are you reading? Because I'm reading a lot of well-written romance, and let me recommend you about 25 titles. But to compliment someone with a slap toward the whole rest of the group of people doing the similar work is not a compliment. Spoiler alert. And so I have gotten things like that where it feels a little bit like, if you've read something 30 years ago, or you snuck something off your grandma's shelf and you haven't read romance in a long time, I'm sorry. I would love to recommend some great things that have been written in the last 5 or 10 years that are fantastic. But like, let's not just disparage a whole group of things that you peripherally are aware of. I don't make fun of your sports ball fandom things. Cool. I'm glad you have a thing you love. Like, so like things like that. I mean, it's very casual and very easy to like punch low at stories about emotional connection, and it's a low punch, but like we live in a culture where you can get an R rating on a movie for sex but not violence. So I don't know. It's where we're at.
I personally, it's not that I just got into romance novels. Like my aunt was a huge, like, had boxes of romance novels, but they were the ones like you're talking about that, like, the ones that I think got sent in, and they had like the people making love on the beach type thing, like the old school ones. And I've always loved romance novels. I just always thought they were like a certain type, and then I got the fantasy. But Molly Harper and has been my, like, I guess should say got into fantasy romance novels. Not that, like, I don't know, I've always loved fantasy, and I wish that there were more fantasy romance novels. I just didn't know that they were like funny fantasy romance novels, and it never hit me that they all hit into one category, or I would have read more over the years. So like right now I'm reading more Molly Harper, and like, so I'm really excited that this like panel is on so I can read more other romance, like just romance novels, because I'm kind of got stuck in a loop of just reading like the entire Discworld series over and over again. Because I was stuck in that, during the pandemic, because that was all like, I was like, I love reading about love. But then like, I just didn't have anything else for the longest time, because besides Molly Harper and like a few other people like the Vine Witch and the Crenshaw series. So I think you guys do amazing work, and I don't understand the point of looking down on anyone that writes books, because it's hard work. Joe?
I mean, no, I have nothing different to say again than my fellow panelists. I mean, I think we've all experienced people like, oh, you write romance? Like, that's a bad thing. And it's not. I mean, so many people read romance. It's like the top selling genre. So I don't know why people are acting like it's something that's beneath or lower than any other genre. Think about all the movies that are out there that are love stories, or that have just a romance in it where it might not be the main plot, but there's a subplot with romance. So many movies, so many TV shows. And, it's clearly that's what people want. And so to poo-poo on that, to poo-poo on someone's joy, I'm trying not to swear, I just think that's not cool. So I know I was given one F-bomb, but I'm going to reserve that one. So anyway, poo-poo.
At the end, we can all say it. No, I'm joking.
All at once, in unison.
All at once.
1, 2. But, I just think that, write what you want to write, and there are always going to be people out there who are going to be haters. It doesn't matter if you're writing, romance, or, I think a lot of sci-fi authors get it. People who might be writing middle grade or young adult, but they're adults. People are like, why are you writing kids' books? Things like that. I mean, we all get some of that. I do think that romance tends to get a bad rep, and I think it's unfortunate, but we love what we do, and I love reading romance, and I'm not going to stop, and I'm not going to stop writing it just because there are people out here who think that we shouldn't. Sorry, I'm going to write it, and I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I like to say the difference between romance and literary fiction is that literary fiction makes people depressed and romance makes people happy. So you go write your depressing, sad books. There's absolutely a place for that. I am going to write my fun books that make people happy and have lots of sex in it.
And searching for Lots of phones.
Hard ones. Elle?
Yeah, I think I've been fairly lucky in that I haven't had any like truly egregious things said to me. But I do get a lot of like, I'll be like, oh, I'm an author. What do you do? Oh, I'm an author. And like, oh, like what do you write? And I'll be like, oh, I write romantic contemporary fantasy, or I write urban fantasy romance, or however I choose to say it that day. And oftentimes I get like, what is that? And I have a little shtick I do depending on the person. And then there's often like oh, okay. Like, yeah, I probably haven't read your stuff or whatever. And that's usually from a dude. And they're trying to be nice. They're just also kind of like, I probably haven't read your stuff. And I'm like, yeah, probably not. And that's a shame for you and your partner.
Yeah.
But
you might learn a few things. I'm just saying.
Everybody, just all around.
Everybody all around. So, but no, it's fine. I think, yeah, everything everybody said was 100% spot on.
Yeah. I don't know. I think romance books are great. Like the ones like I've really read. I can't wait to read some of the books you guys wrote. Like that's really exciting. Like it just makes me happy to know there's just more out there. Like especially now, like y'all said, especially now in Seattle where the weather is getting cold and rainy and dark outside.
It's
you
so
need
yucky.
That nice little warm little bit in your heart. Let's go back. I finally caught up on the questions. Everybody, I just want you to know, everybody loves the conversations. You guys, y'all are 100% supported. Chat's going crazy. I know Jen's in chat. She can read it, right? Jen's here.
The chat's the best. I'm enjoying the Hemsworth,
okay. Jasmine's here. Okay,
like
good. I'm like everyone, so I'm not the only one. I feel bad. I'm like, I can't read you guys word for word, but everyone loves you. So you've already kind of answered like the last two questions from questions in chat. So I was gonna ask one more and then wrap it up if that sounds good to everybody, unless y'all wanted to keep chatting. I'm gonna keep doing the shoulder thing. I don't know why.
Well,
we said we were gonna.
Yeah.
Keep doing this. The challenges of being a woman STEM often take an additional dimensions when one is from a marginalized community. Would any of you who have chosen to incorporate these challenges in your novels like to speak to that? Jasmine.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I think I don't want to beat a dead horse. I mean, I've done this, I talked about this a little bit earlier, but Barbara is a woman of color. She is half Black and a Czech. So she's living in a world where she's fluent in a language and is born in this place, but then also is treated like an outsider because of the color of her skin. And I think, I think that's an experience that people of color have had all over the world. And so whenever you move or you leave or you go out of the zone where people expect to find you, and we can talk about why those expectations are or whatever. Yeah, so I've lost my total train of thought. I think the additional challenge is that, there are dual sets of stereotypes and beliefs that work when you are a woman and you're a woman operating in a predominantly male. And, we talk about cisgehet, we can talk about whiteness, and all of those things mean that there's an extra lens on what you do and how you do it. And so in that way, I think Barbara gets the double edge of that sword where she's, not only in its predominantly male environment, but she's also, if we get angry or we stand up or we raise our voices, we're angry. We have these things that get lumped on top of the gender issue. And I think I tried to sort of get at that with Barbara in Binding Shadows. I think that one of the things that both my hero and heroine are dealing with in academia is that they are people of color, and that kind of binds them. It gives them a kind of common ground to talk to, and how important it can be to have people that recognize your commonality and where you're coming from in those fields is huge. And I think So that's where I tried to touch on it a little bit. I think it's not the majority of their struggle. I mean, the majority of their struggle is against a 400-year-old witch who has possessed a book and is bound on possessing Barbara so she can take over the world. But it does play into the nuance of their characters and how they deal with the challenges that they're going to face because they're outsiders in a community that may or may not want them, depending on whether it looks good to have someone of color on the faculty or it's bad, annoying to them to have to deal with somebody that they don't want to have to deal with. So I mean, try to add some layers. And I mean, that's just going into character building. It's like, where are these people coming from and what are their experience and how does that shape how they handle the challenges they're going to face in the book? And so, yeah, I think that's where I come from. I come to with that.
Oh, that's awesome. I like how you said like the language and you don't really speak it depending on where you're from. Like, I feel that.
Well, I mean, I was in Prague with a very good friend of mine who is African and fluent Czech speaker, like native speaker, and watching people interact with her and treat her very much like, especially when we were together, was really interesting. Just to see that, you know, we often think of where racism exists and how it displays, and there are some forms that are very benign, you know, and some that are less benign. But all of them are, you know, we call it microaggressions for a reason, because cumulatively, it can be damaging to have to sort of constantly be facing people's expectations of you and having to sort of override them. And I think we don't talk about that weight a lot in fiction. And so there it is. Anyway, that's my story.
That's great.
Stick to it.
Yeah. No, I often, because I was born in San Antonio and being Mexican and then coming to Seattle, the first thing I get asked is, oh, you speak Spanish? And it's like, no, actually, my dad never taught me Spanish because he did not want us to be discriminated against growing up. So I was never taught that, but I'm glad you, who was often white, get to know Spanish, and I did not, but, you know, that's great. We'll talk about that another time, you know, so that's awesome that you can bring that up in your book. That's pretty cool. Jen, did you want to comment on this, or Joe?
I'll let Joe.
Yeah, Joe. Sorry.
So as I mentioned, the main character in my book, she's Latina, and, you know, my Mexican heritage is really important to me. And I will be honest, I really wanted to name a character after my great aunt Segura, which is not a name that you hear every day, but the name means help, which is so appropriate for Corey's character, because she's literally brought in to help this, you know, on this archaeological dig. But, you know, I think about all those movies that I keep talking about, you know, and in those movies, there is no Latinx representation at all. I mean, unless you're going to count that Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as having some Latinx representation. But oh my gosh, I don't think we want to talk about that. So I just watched it again recently because I was like, is it as bad as I remember? It is. It is as bad as I remember. But, you know, all those movies that I loved so much, like my parents were huge nerds. And, you know, they really brought us up watching like all the, you know, what we consider as the nerdy, geeky shows and movies, like the Star Wars and Star Trek. We were really into Indiana Jones, things like that. And none of those movies or none of those adventure movies have any Latinx representation. And so I really wanted to incorporate that, but also not just to have the main character as being Latina, but also that they're out there searching for Aztec artifacts. I've always been really fascinated by Aztec culture. And so I thought that would be something that would be really fun to explore. And so I was able to really get into it and do some research, learning things that I didn't know before I started writing the book. I also thought it was really important to explore Corey's sexuality. She's a very sexual person, and the book is very sex positive. And so, you know, she is not someone who has, you know, relationships, like long-term relationships. She is more into having casual sexual encounters. And I wanted to make that, you know, really big part of her character. But when we think about women of color, a lot of times they're viewed as being exotic. And I just really hate hearing that. Like, just because it's a person of color doesn't mean that all of a sudden they're exotic. But it's, again, like I mentioned, something that she struggles a lot with in the book, because people view her mostly by the way she looks and not by other parts of her, like her brains and whatnot. So, I kind of brought all of that into the book, but it was really something that I wanted to explore more. And a lot of it, like I mentioned, is being mostly because we don't see a lot of that in these types of stories. So I just really wanted to make sure that those voices were also being heard.
Yeah, I remember growing up and seeing those movies, and most of the time when you saw a Latinx person, that was usually the guide to the person that was going,
Yep.
They're not usually the person that's the adventurer. It's usually
Yep.
like, I can show you to the treasure. That
Yep.
was, yeah.
Or they tend to be the
Sidekick.
bad guys,
Or the bad guy.
which, I think that that's unfortunate. And so this was like an opportunity for, the main character to be that person of color rather than them being the sexy sidekick, for example.
Oh yeah. Even though like it's their homeland and they know more about the land, and like,
Mm-hmm.
it would make way more sense, but
Yep.
Elle or Jen, would you guys like to comment on or say anything or add anything or?
No, I feel like Jazz and Joe kind of really hit the spot there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
Awesome. Janae says the National Treasure series will have a Latina lead actress. The new National Treasure. Yeah, that's
Right.
exciting.
Yes.
Yes. I mean,
I love those movies too. I love those movies, but wanting to see someone that you can identify with, I think, is really important. And so just having more options out there, I think is really great.
like, I like The Mummy, but honestly, like Brendan Fraser, it would be cool to see like a new Brendan Fraser, but a female, non-white female Brendan Fraser.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, that would be amazing. But yes, like a heisty. Let's do this. It'll be great. It'll be out there. It'll be good. I think you guys are breaking the barrier for a lot of awesome things to happen and opening the door for a lot of women and giving just a place to escape. And I know that Chad appreciates you. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for being here in GeekGirlCon. Thank you. And thank you everybody in chat. Please tell us again your tags, your information, where we can buy your books, a little bit about you guys, remind us all. We'll start with Jasmine, and then Jasmine, you can call out the next, and we'll just go around. Jazz, go.
All right. So Jasmine Silvera, I am most often on Instagram, especially as Twitter is doing its thing right now. You please support your indie bookstore. So you should be able to walk into your indie and order Binding Shadows or Conjuring Moonlight there. Or you can go to the website, and I'm happy to sign a copy for you and send it to your home or office with some lovely swag. So I thank you for coming out, and I hope to see you. We've got third book coming out in the series in the spring, and I'm very excited for that. Charming Dawn is the name. And on to you, Joe.
Right, again, I'm Joe Segura. My book, Raiders of the Lost Heart, will be coming out next fall. Fall might be December. That's just the way it works in the traditional publishing world. They consider anything basically from August until December, fall. So some point next fall, it will be coming out. And I would love it if you read my book and told me what you thought about it. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Joe Segura Books. And I will be at GeekGirlCon this weekend. So if you see me, I won't be purple. There's something weird going on with my lighting, but I will be there in person. So please feel free to come up and say hi. And I'd love to talk books. I'd love to talk archaeology. I'd love to talk nerdy movies, anything, just let me know. All right, Jen, you're up.
All right, I'm Jen Comfort. You can probably find me the most often on Instagram at jen.comfort.author. And my first book, The Astronaut and the Star, came out in March. You can find it on the Amazon and everywhere else that books are sold, or they can order it for you. My second book is a Phantom of the Opera retelling. It's called Midnight Duet, and that is going to be out on January 10th. So please pre-order that, because pre-ordering is really good for helping me get another book contract so I can keep writing more books. And then I will also be at the con on Saturday in cosplay as my goth astronaut heroine, Reggie. So if you see a astronaut who looks like a goth, it's going to be me. And you can get one of these Science Bitch postcards that I made, and I'll sign it for you if you want.
Yay. That's the day
Elle.
before my birthday. Your pre-order.
Yay.
Yay. Go ahead, Elle.
Let's see. I'm Elle Beauregard. You can find me online at ellebeauregard.com. So that's my website. On Instagram and on TikTok, sometimes on Twitter. I do have a Facebook, but is anyone doing that anymore? But you can find me at all those places. Let's see, what else? Oh, you can find most of my books in paperback and in ebook at all major ebook stores or all major online bookstores, or you can go to my website if you want to order a paperback signed. It'll probably get to you faster than it will on Amazon these days, and I get a little bit more of the money that way. Amazon takes a lot. So, but yeah, so my newest book is Blood Bond. So you can find that everywhere and ebooks everywhere and all of that. I don't know. What am I missing? I will hopefully be at GeekGirlCon, but I'm not sure that's going to get to happen. So we'll see.
Oh, yeah. Get better.
I'm trying.
Well, thank you all. And I'm so excited that so many of you guys will be at GeekGirlCon. GeekGirlCon is this Saturday. Tickets are still on sale, and I know I'll be seeing some of y'all. I will hope to be seeing more of you guys. We'll have our Twitch booth up on the second floor right when you get off the escalator. Be sure to stop by all the booths at GeekGirlCon, especially the authors. Come see the authors, the panels, the artists, and I can't wait to see everybody there. I'll see you guys Saturday. Bye.
Bye.